Hello. I'm going to show you the basic techniques of hand building involving the pinch pot. And I'm going to go over a little bit about joining clay and some of the tools. When you go over and you get your clay from the block, you will use a slab cutter and you'll cut a piece, and it is about 3/4 of an inch thick. This clay has already been vacuum packed, so you do not need to wedge it. I will go over wedging a little bit more when you start to use recycled clay. With this, however, you do need to, for a pinch pot, you need to work this into a ball. You will always grab, when you get your clay, a canvas mat from the plastic white tub to work on. When you start, the idea is you don't want to end up with air pockets in the center of this. So I'm going to fold the clay over and really pound it out, and I'm just using the palm of my hand. Try to get as much, make sure that I'm not just folding it and leaving a bunch of air in there. I'm going to do that and try to compact this as much as possible before I start to work this into a ball. And I think it would be easiest to kind of pound this into as close to a circle as you can. If you want to pound it into a square, it doesn't have to be a perfect shape, you get the idea. So then I could pick it up and continue pounding this with the palm of my hand. Now, the more you work with clay, whether it's on the canvas mat or you're just using your hands, you are taking the moisture out of this clay. So sometimes when you get recycled clay and you're building something, you'll feel like you constantly want to add water, it's cracking too fast, it gets crumbly. So that's why you always, especially when you're using recycled clay, you want to try to work fairly quick. But this clay is brand new, so you've got plenty of time to work with it. You may even end up forming several of these until you get one that you really, really like. So my rings are leaving marks all over it. So I'm just getting this into somewhat of a ball. Now, to begin your pinch pot, this is very simple. All you're going to do is press your two thumbs into the center, and don't press real far, and using my thumbs and my fingers, I'm going to apply equal amounts of pressure, turning my clay, so that as I'm pressing with my thumbs and my fingers, I am slowly making the inside of this thinner. And you can see I switched to one hand because I feel like it's a little easier. Now as I'm doing this, I am pressing with my thumb a little bit more than my fingers. My fingers are keeping it from just getting too thin because I don't want my walls to get too thin. At the same time, this is way too thick. So I'm just going to keep going and till I get a shape that I like, the thickness that I'm comfortable with. And you can see when you do a pinch pot, a lot of times the bottom will be narrower because you have a tendency to pull out up by your thumb, and the top will tend to get thinner too fast. So that's why I'm really pushing out with my thumb to keep the bottom of this coming out so that my top isn't getting too thin. I'm almost not pressing up here. I'm going to keep going around, and as I'm doing this, I'm almost pulling the top kind of in instead of out. You'll notice a lot of people when they do this, the top will get thin and this starts to come out, and I'm trying to keep it all in. So I want to try to get this as close to the same thickness all the way around, and there's a lot of times that starting a project with this technique is going to come in handy. whether you're doing sculptures or when you start making different kinds of containers, you're going to be using this a lot. Okay, so now I've got this and I can feel where it's a little thicker. I can go around and try to even it out. So this is like just your basic pinch pot. Now, once you've gotten this far, there's a lot of things you can do from this point. First, I can keep on working it until my sides are even, or I like the opening of this. Right now, you can look at as far as how it sets. Mine sets okay. I can pound it and make the bottom even flatter. You could gently roll this if you want to make sure that your sides are more even. You can add, kind of pinch down these sides and make some sort of decorative top to this. It doesn't have to just stay that original pinched out shape that you made, and I would prefer it not to. I'd prefer that you add some unique changes to this. Once you are done and you get the shape you want it, which I think I liked it the way I had it before, but once you have it pinched out, you want to make sure that there are not any cracks or creases anywhere. And then you have a lot of other options with this. You can add something to this. You can actually, if you wanted to add a handle, if it was like a mug, you could add feet to it so that it stands up. You could put little feet on the bottom. So what I want to do is go over how you connect something and you add it. A lot of the actual cleanup process, you want to try to do as much of it before you leave it out to dry. So let's say the bell was going to ring, I couldn't do any more to this, and I wasn't done or I wasn't happy with it. You have to get paper towels, get them damp, squeeze out the excess moisture, and wrap this completely and put it in a bag, the bag that you got when you got your clay. Then when you take it out, you unwrap it and you can continue to work with it. So I'm going to show you real quick how you would add something onto this and kind of go over a couple different tools that will always be very helpful in anything that you make. So right now I've got a very rough shape here, and I am going to go ahead and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to crumble this up. And I'm going to go ahead and show you wedging, and I'm going to take a piece of this away so I can use it to add something to it. So this is now recycled clay. You'll be using a lot of recycled clay, and when you get recycled clay, it's very important to make sure that there's no air in here. So I'm going to show you how to wedge. Wedging basically involves pounding the clay, but also flattening it with the palm of your hand. If any of you have ever seen or made bread, you knead the dough. It's kind of the same thing, but you're just making sure that you're really squeezing out any air pockets that could possibly be in there. And you want to do this kind of quickly again, because you can already tell if you look real close that my clay is starting to get a lot of little cracks in it. It's starting to, all the original moisture, it's starting to dry out. So I'm just going to really squeeze the clay and get as much air or any other imperfections in the clay out. Sometimes you'll even run into little pieces of paper towel, which if you can get those out, get them out. And I'm going to pound this out again, and I'm going to show you a trick as far as a way to know if there's still air in it. And I'm just going to take this serrated metal wedge tool, but if I was to cut open this clay, you can see that the sides were smooth. If there were air pockets, you'd see holes. So I wedged it fine. Okay, So I'm just going to get back real quick here to a pinch pot. So again, I'm going to pound this out. And try to get as much of the creases out as I can. Push my thumbs in. I'm going to start working it around. Okay, now I'm just going to leave this real rough so I can show you how to make a connection with clay. Okay, so I've just got a very rough pinch pot. Now, this serrated tool, you'll use this for all kinds of things. Some of them, there's metal wedge tools that do not have the serrated edge, like this, and then this one has a serrated edge. Both of these are very handy. First, whenever you get a slab of clay that does not come directly from the bag, such as when we start slab projects and you use the slab roller, when you get your slab, it's always good to use just a regular wedge tool without the serrated edges to smooth it out. It actually combines all the molecules of the clay and makes it a little bit stronger. And prior to cutting out the handle I'm going to add to this, I want to make sure that it's fairly the same thickness. I wouldn't want one part of this real thin and the other part real thick. This is a needle tool. This is probably what most students use for cutting their clay. There is also a tool that has like a little curved knife and a straight knife. This is fine. The only problem is sometimes if you're going through something real thick, it will leave like a real rough edge. So I'm just going to make a strip. And you can see I have to take off that extra clay when I'm using this. Okay. Then I'm going to kind of pull this out, make it a little bit thinner, and try to do as much smoothing out as I can right now. And I can go back to using this tool. Okay, now when you join something, there's two things you can use to rough it up, and you need to rough up the edge. This is a wire brush. So I can use this, and if you can see, it is roughed up the very end of the clay. Then I have to rough up where it's going to be joined on my piece. And then this is when the slip comes in. And I said you can think of this as a clay glue. Now this stuff I just made this morning, so it's a little on the watery side, but all you want to do is fill in those rough edges that you made with the slip. And then I'm going to attach this. Just press real hard. You don't want any air in there. And then there's all kinds of wooden tools. And to actually join this, you want a wooden tool that has a nice, smooth, curved edge. And when I join this, I'm like just going right at the base and pinching the clay down and getting rid of a crease. I don't want to change the shape of it, so I'm not going to pinch so much that I've lost the shape of the handle, but I've got to make sure that I actually join that, okay? So you can see. And this clay is really wet still. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to rough it up where it needs joined on both sides on the handle and on the pinch pot. Put my slip, press that, and then, and I'm going to try to get closer so you can see, I'm going to come in here with this tool and I'm actually pinching down a tiny bit of the clay. So it's completely attached. You do not want to skip this because what happens is as your piece dries, that can just snap right off. Okay? So that is how you would actually join a piece of clay to a piece of clay. Okay? So that is a pinch pot. Couple of the tools, like I said, there's all different kinds of wooden tools, and you can see this is probably one of my favorite shapes for connecting and smoothing out edges, but the other end of the tools has different shapes. The wedge, this is a smooth edge wedge. You'll see I have a couple different kinds too, like this is a plastic one, this is a metal one. And then the serrated edge, this you could use the same way I used the wire brush. So you could either, if you were scoring a real large piece like this piece, and I was connecting something, it'd be a lot easier just to take this to score it instead of using this little tiny brush. And then I have that entire edge scored so that if I was like gonna attach it to this, it would be a lot easier to score it using this. Put my slip on, attach this piece like that, and then I'd have to go around and join the edges with my wooden tool. And I think I've about covered everything I needed to cover with you. The only other thing is with these tools, make sure you get the extra clay off of them. Don't put them back covered in clay. And you can just rinse them with water, dry them, put them back. Make sure any little tiny pieces like this laying around that you're not using, don't throw those away. I make my slip with all the leftover clay. This, if I was done with this, I would make sure I would ball this up, and I will have bags where you will put clay for recycling so that if somebody else needed more clay, they could use this. One other thing, while you're working, you may at times have huge pieces of extra clay when you're doing a large construction. Try not to just leave it sit out on your workspace. Okay, once you're cut and you're working on something, don't just leave this sit here in the air. Have your bag, get a paper towel. Obviously this is not damp enough, but get a damp paper towel, keep this wrapped up, and just at least cover it with your plastic bag so that it doesn't dry out and get to the point where I have to go through rehydrating it. And that's it. Good luck.